Secretary of State, what is the estimate of the UK's obligations, financial obligations, in the case of no deal? We know about the roughly 39 billion in the case of a deal.
Yeah. So it's a very good question, because I often hear people quote the famous House of Lords report suggesting that we have no financial obligations, whereas actually a closer reading of that report said, but we would also have legal obligations to meet. And I think there's several parts to that question, if I may say. So there's certain things where, for example, on tariffs, things have been collected the way you would expect. There is a clear legal obligation. There are certain things that are part of the settlement that has been reached, and the EU would obviously expect that to be addressed. But as the Prime Minister repeatedly said at the time, that settlement was reached in the context of nothing is agreed until everything is agreed, to use the phrase that the Prime Minister stated at the time. So we would need to look at that, but I think when some colleagues, and I know Peter Bone on this committee previously suggested that in the event of no deal, zero would need to be paid, I think that suggests that there are no legal obligations in the event of no deal, and I think that would be a difficult argument to sustain.
And would you expect us to be required to pay a considerable part or all of the current financial framework up to the end of 2020, even if we left without a deal, given that if we leave with a deal, we will be within the single market and customs union, and therefore continuing as normal, paying that money?
So, well, I mean, it depends, because a lot of the what's referred to as the 35 to 39 billion pound figure included, obviously, the interim transitional period. Which is, so if you're talking about no deal, there's a question mark, obviously, because there's a difference there. Then there's a question within the legal obligations on the hierarchy where they sit. Obviously, I don't want to preempt what would be further discussions with the EU in that context. And there's obviously a question in terms of a no deal, what other arrangements are reached to with the EU.
So finally, you would expect a considerable sum to be payable in the event of no deal, although you couldn't be specific about how much.
I mean, those are your words. I think what I was saying was, I think within the figure that gets bandied around, there are various components. Yeah. So there are components that relate to the implementation period, and if it was a no-deal exit without the implementation period, clearly that is different. There are questions around how you disengage a 2019 period compared to future years, because obviously we're into the 29-year period, so there's questions around that. There's questions around the wider discussions on no deal and what negotiations. We had a debate earlier around data and some of these issues. So it's the reason I think it's a very interesting point is because there is quite a bit of complexity within it.
Thank you.